Hi, and welcome to Open, the show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world to you. I'm Kibin Alleyne, and today we'll update you on what's happening in and around our borough. Coming up, for many Americans, it is hard to quit smoking, but sometimes hearing another smoker's journey to quit smoking could help others. A program manager for NYC Treats Tobacco and a former smoker joins me to discuss how others could learn to quit. How can others learn to quit smoking? Then the IRS reports taxpayers may see smaller refunds this year, and there may be a few reasons for this occurrence. Senior tax partner for Commission Ent LLC joins me to discuss why this may be happening. How did a pandemic-related stimulus affect what Americans will see in their tax refunds? After that, do you wake up sore or toss and turn all night? Well, you're not alone. Many people suffer from a lack of proper sleep. A home writer for Consumer Reports joins me to give you some advice on how you can improve your quality of sleep. What is the secret to a good night's rest? And finally, organization Partners Health Plan seeks to overcome dental health disparities. The medical director for PHP sits with us later to tell us more about their upcoming event. How is PHP going to help the IDD community? So stay tuned. All this and much more is headed your way because we're now officially open. Hello, everyone. I'm Kibin Alleyne, and today is Tuesday, January 31st. You are now watching Open, a live program bringing the Bronx in New York City straight to you. Don't forget to stay connected with us via social media at BronxNet.TV. For many people, taking the first step to quit smoking can be the most challenging. According to the CDC, cigarette smoking remains the leading cause of preventable disease, disability, and death in the United States. Organizations like the New York State Smokers Quit Line aim to assist Americans on their journey to a smoke-free life. A program manager for NYC Treats Tobacco, Jackie Saltarelli, and former smoker Marielle Fisk joined me to discuss. Thank you both so much for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so Jackie, can you actually tell me a little bit more about your organization, NYC Treats Tobacco?
Sure. So New York City Treats Tobacco is funded by New York State Department of Health's Bureau of Tobacco Control. And what we do is we work with healthcare organizations that are both medical and behavioral healthcare organizations throughout all 5 boroughs of New York City to make sure that their providers are effectively working with their patients to help their patients who smoke quit smoking. So the reason we do this is because studies have shown that people who work with their healthcare providers actually double their odds of quitting tobacco. So we work with healthcare organizations to make sure people are screened and treated for tobacco use.
So I actually want to touch on that a little bit. You said that people who work with their healthcare providers are more likely to quit smoking. So does that mean that just trying to quit on your own can be a little bit more challenging?
It definitely can be a little bit more challenging, and people who successfully quit often get help. So whether it's by working with your healthcare provider, getting support from the New York State Smokers Quit Line, getting counseling, medication, when you use some of these different methods or techniques, it makes you more likely to successfully quit than quitting cold turkey. I think only 3 to 5% of people who do quit cold turkey are actually successful. So by getting that support, it really can help you move forward in your quit.
So as many of us know, smoking and even vaping now, is very addictive, affecting so many Americans. But I'm really interested to know how this is affecting young adults and even teenagers.
Definitely. So some good news, New York State actually conducted a survey in 2020 of high school youth, and they found that cigarette smoking among high school youth is actually at its lowest it's been in the state. It's under 3%, so that's great. But that same survey also found that about 25% of high school youth who were surveyed are smoking e-cigarettes and are vaping. So this is dangerous because e-cigarettes have really high levels of nicotine, and nicotine can be addictive and actually affect adolescent brain development. So it can affect brain development. It also can cause lung damage and other things. So the good news is that there are ways to help youth quit, like using the quit line and working with their providers.
Now, Marielle, I understand that you had a similar introduction to smoking. Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think my story is pretty typical. I had my first cigarette when I was 15 years old, just hanging out with friends. And no one in my family smokes, but I had been around it just socially. And, I had my first cigarette at a party and then, would have one here and there, just hanging out with friends. And by the time I was 18, I was, what I would call, a full-time smoker. So I continued smoking about a pack a day. I actually studied abroad in France when I was in college, and that didn't help things. There's a lot of people that smoke in that country. So yeah, I was definitely a pack to a pack and a half a day smoker for many, many years. I wanted to quit. It really wasn't until last year that I started experiencing some of the physical side effects of long-time smoking. I was waking up in the morning and just kind of hacking, with this awful smoker's cough. And I think it's easy for teens to kind of feel like they're invincible. And, the perception of, side effects that are going to affect your long-term health, when they're so far off, I think it's easy to kind of ignore them. But when you actually start experiencing them yourself, that's when it kind of hits home. So I'm so lucky that I did have a physician that referred me to the quit line, and the quit line has been really successful and helping me to finally quit smoking.
How does it feel to hear now that a lot of teens are kind of stepping away from smoking tobacco? I know they're still doing like e-cigarettes and vaping, but how does it feel to know that teens are stepping away from that?
I think that e-cigarettes are a real concern, and that can't be ignored. I do think that, people walking away from tobacco itself, I am happy to see that. I do think that one of the things about e-cigarettes that's a little bit troubling is that the long-term effects of them aren't quite fully understood at this point because we haven't, been vaping for as long as people have been smoking.
Right.
And it took a long time for us to fully understand, the health ramifications of smoking tobacco. So that's a little bit troubling, but we know, the effects of smoking cigarettes, and, it's a terrible way to die. And if we can, save, some of our loved ones from that fate, then I think it's a wonderful thing.
Now, Jackie, I want to talk about like the actual health, repercussions of smoking. Can you just talk about like what are some of the common things that can happen, like when you start smoking or if you've been smoking long term?
Sure. Smoking, in the short term and long term, it can have so many different health consequences. It can affect kind of all parts of your body. So it can really affect your cardiovascular health. It can help you could develop COPD with your lungs. It can also cause many forms of cancer all throughout the body. So not just lung cancer, but also things like colon cancer, etc. So it can really be detrimental, but it also can affect your behavioral health. A lot of times people who smoke can experience feelings of sadness or depression, anxiety, irritability, etc. So oftentimes when people do quit, they actually experience reduced amounts of stress, anxiety, depression, and kind of increased quality of life when they do quit.
Now, I thought this was really interesting. Why was it important to observe behavioral health in addition to medical or, just your physical health when it comes to smoking? Because I think a lot of times we see just the, how it affects your lungs and stuff like that. But, why is it important to also look at mental health and behavioral health?
Yeah, so a lot of research has shown that people who experience behavioral health conditions, when compared to people who don't, actually experience smoke more, but also smoke more heavily. So when you're dealing with a behavioral health condition, smoking can really kind of make it even more difficult. But oftentimes people kind of, when they are dealing with the behavioral health condition and also just in general, smoke to kind of relieve stress, get away from things. But the reality is smoking can actually kind of increase those feelings of anxiety, etc. So it's really important to kind of think about how behavioral health can kind of really enhance the effects that tobacco can have.
And Marielle, did you notice from your experience any changes in your behavior? Maybe you could back at a point where you're like, I don't like this feeling and I want to change it.
Yeah, I think that discussing the behavioral aspect of quitting smoking and of smoking itself is important because, looking back on when I was smoking, pardon me, and I'm not smoking right now. This is because I'm just getting over being sick. Excuse me. But when I was smoking, I did feel higher instances of irritability and not so much depression, but irritability and I would say anxiety. And I think a lot of smokers get into this trap where they think that smoking reduces anxiety. People oftentimes will kind of be nervous and agitated or irritable and they think, oh, I need a cigarette. Like that's something that you kind of hear in popular culture even. But the fact is that smoking is, kind of the thing that is causing those feelings of irritability and anxiety. So I definitely feel actually more even keeled since I quit smoking, less irritable and less anxious for sure. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's been really nice. I think it's been so nice because that makes me think of just the feeling of being free since I quit smoking, that I'm not, tethered to this thing that I need to kind of like, treat this anxiety that I'm feeling, which again, doesn't even actually treat that emotion that you're feeling at that time in the first place.
Now, Jackie, what services are available for people in the Bronx? As you may know, the Bronx is like one of the unhealthiest boroughs, and we have so many things that we're working towards. So what services are available for people in this community?
Totally. So New York City Department of Health actually identified a few different smoking cessation programs in the Bronx. So Health and Hospitals, Lincoln and Jacoby, as well as Montefiore all have tobacco cessation programs. So people can look that up. And those programs can really help think through like what the most effective way for you to quit is. But additionally, connecting with your healthcare provider, they can help set you up and think about ways to quit and set up a quit plan. But I just really want to emphasize the New York State Smokers Quit Line. So anybody throughout the Bronx or New York State can call the Quit Line. They provide free counseling services. They'll talk you through kind of where you're at, how ready you are to quit, come up with a plan. And they're also able to send people who are interested free NRT, so nicotine replacement therapy. So that means they can get access to free patches, gum, lozenges, etc. So it's a great resource if people just want to learn more and also get some of those free resources which do help people quit.
Now, Marielle, we're almost out of time, but I definitely want to ask, what is something that you would say to somebody to encourage them to quit smoking? Or, what is that first step to know that this is a path that they should consider taking?
Yeah, I think that reaching out to the Quit Line is a really good first step. But I think making a commitment to yourself, choosing a quit date, I think is really powerful. And I think sharing with family and friends that, I am quitting, I think is important. I think any extra layer that you can add on to hold yourself accountable, to successfully quitting it is useful. Talking about yourself as a former smoker once you, make the decision to quit. And if you fail, it's not failing because every day that you don't smoke tobacco, that's an improvement over, smoking every single day. So, just keep at it.
All right, I want to thank you both so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
To stay up to date with the New York State Smokers Quit Line, please go to their website at www.nysmokefree.com. And to get in touch with NYC Treats Tobacco, please email them at nyctt@nyu.edu. Don't go away. We'll be right back with more Open right after this. Jason, let's go see your room.
What do you think? We kept it a little spare, so you can decorate it how you like.
Dinner!
Go. Excellent. Suckers. Yeah, I saw you guys out there. We're in the family. Yeah! I thought you were on my team.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. Can you see anything different as a pill?
No.
You don't know?
Fentanyl is being mixed into everything now. There's only one thing that will save somebody's life. That is naloxone nasal spray.
Fentanyl, it's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
Why would drug dealers put a lethal dose of fentanyl in drugs if they know it's so harmful?
Really just all about the money.
I just didn't realize that one pill could change your whole life.
More kitchen now.
Welcome back. It's that time of year for people who look forward to tax refund season. During this time, Americans usually receive a federal refund when they have overpaid yearly taxes or withheld more than the amount they owe. However, the IRS reports that this year, taxpayers may see smaller refunds. Joining me to discuss why we may see this is Senior Tax Partner for the Commission Ent LLC, Jeffrey Almanzar. Jeffrey, thank you so much for joining us and in person this time.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I want to talk about, the whole idea of like the tax refunds being smaller. Can you just first say, how did the stimulus affect how the stimulus may affect what you see in your refund?
Right. So there was an influx of credits that were given to the public during the pandemic. But as far as the refunds actually being smaller, they're basically just reverting back to 2019 numbers, right? So whatever refunds you were getting, if the same criteria apply, if you still have the same dependents, you still have the same amount of income, and you pay the same amount of taxes, then your refund should look relatively the same to what they looked like in 2019. So it'll definitely be a difference between 2020 and 2021 because of all the pandemic, all the stimulus. They also raised the child tax credits, but now they just reverted back to what they were in 2019.
So you mentioned something called child tax credit. This was introduced as a new tax benefit, during the pandemic. Can you explain what that is and why people, will no longer see it?
Right. So during the pandemic, what they did is that they started giving people the option to opt in to receive monthly payments in advance, where basically they'll get 6 months of the child tax credit spread out. But that just meant that when you actually file your tax return, that you was going to get that amount taken away from the refund because you basically already received it in advance. So it's basically just a push, a little help while we get towards the tax refund.
Now, there was something also called charitable deductions. That may also contribute to the reason why we may be seeing smaller refunds this year. Can you just explain why?
So the charitable contribution deduction was a $300 credit per taxpayer or $600 if it was a married couple. It's an above the line credit, which means that you get it before the standard deduction. But in reality, if you were to calculate what that $300 contribution actually reflects on your refund, it's like a $50 to $60 give or take of a difference. So of course, I would take $60 right now, but it's really not going to break the bank, as far as what that contribution was actually doing for the public. Yeah.
Now, I think that's so interesting that, you say it's like only $50, $60. It's like we all would love that, but what are your ideas on like when people kind of depend on these refunds to kind of maybe like, we finally got, this lump sum of money, like we could do something with it. What are your thoughts on people who depend on that?
I mean, everyone has their needs,
right.
And everyone has their struggles, but ideally you would want people to not have to depend on these refunds and to have a plan in place throughout the year to save enough to live below their means, so they're not struggling and catching up to pay their bills. But the reality is that right now a lot of people are struggling, so every dollar counts, and a lot of people are looking forward to these tax refunds in order to survive or pay bills or keep the lights on. So in an ideal world, you want people to spend less, you want them to save more, you want them to be more savvy with their money, learn how to budget, and just focus on what their needs are as opposed to any of the wants right now. So that would be my best advice right now.
Now, in addition to seeing lower refunds, this may be a little bit scary for some people, but they may actually owe taxes this year. What are some of the circumstances that could lead people to have to pay the IRS?
So if they receive a W-2 at the end of the year, then prior to the working year, they would receive a form called a W-4. So on that W-4 is where you make the decision on how much taxes you want taken out. So a lot of people should definitely revise that W-4 and make sure that the amount of taxes that's taken out of their weekly paycheck is enough to cover the taxes that they would owe on the amount of income, so that they would actually come to like a small refund rather than having to pay. So you can actually control that based on how your weekly check looks like every week. So your W-4 would be where you would fix that.
Now, what can people expect in regard to filing now that a lot of those pandemic tax benefits are gone? And I know you mentioned it's kind of like going back to before, but before seems so long ago now. What should people expect?
They should definitely expect the refunds to be smaller than what they were in the pandemic. But it also depends on the situation, because some people actually got higher paying jobs and they started working and they started making more money. Some people are actually getting higher refunds this year because they pay more in taxes, so it's not a one size fits all situation. So a lot of people that did lose their jobs and didn't have income would probably not get a refund this year, so it's all relative to what happened during the year. I would definitely suggest everyone hire a professional, and this is the times that you definitely don't want, to go blindly into this tax season, and make sure you get everything that you're entitled to.
Now, I was just going to touch on that because we're now pretty much approaching that where, it's time to start doing that kind of stuff. How should people prepare? I know there are a lot of online things that help. There are also people that help. What would you suggest people do just to make sure that they're doing things correctly now that we are kind of stepping away from a lot of the pandemic tax benefits and stuff? What should people do just to prepare and make sure that they're filing correctly?
So I suggest a lot of people to open up IRS accounts and to open up New York State accounts, and to have some sort of knowledge of what these websites provide, in the sense of knowing what every other entity is reporting to these companies, in order for you to know exactly what to file. And that will also help you gather all your information. So a lot of people during the pandemic were jumping around from different jobs, and some of them lost track of how many jobs they even worked in, so being able to have access to all these employers and going into your records and say, okay, I have 10 employers that furnish information to the IRS, so I have to make sure that I file these tax returns, reach out to these people to make sure. And then another thing that we do is that we provide all of our clients with a tax organizer. So basically this tax organizer has all of your previous year tax information, so you can guide yourself from what happened in the last year and see if there's something that you might have missed for this year. So that's also a help in order for you to organize yourself that way as well.
Now, how can people ensure that they're getting the most out of their tax returns? Of course, you don't want to say anything that's false, but how can they make sure that they're getting the most when they go through this tax season?
It's very hard when you don't have the knowledge of, they say, there's a quote that says, you don't know what you don't know, right? So if you're going somewhere, you don't know what questions to ask, you definitely want to be in a situation where you can ask someone or have a conversation where they can uncover things that can help you with your unique situation. You know, so if you have a home, you know, if you have a business, if you have an in-house nanny, if you have, you know, a car, if you're doing Uber, you know, all these different scenarios have a different strategy, you know, so you definitely want to interview the people that are helping you and make sure that they have an experience in your unique situation. So I would say try to have conversations, talk to friends and family, and ask them, do they know about this certain, you know, situation that I'm in, you know, and go based on that.
Now, when does filing officially begin, and what can be, I know it may be hard, but you know, what can people expect to see on their refund, and you know, what can help speed up that process?
So the IRS actually opened yesterday, right? So they're already starting to process tax returns. As far as expediting the process, definitely, you know, having all your information, making sure that you have, you know, your bank accounts up to date, making sure that you're providing your tax preparer with any information that might have changed throughout the year. And as far as expediting the process, it's very hard to really pinpoint certain days. You know, the IRS says anywhere between 10 business days to 21 business days. But if you've seen in the news, there's people that have been waiting for a year for a tax return, for a tax refund. And they were super, you know, backed up with staff in the IRS. You would have to wait hours just to get someone on the phone. So it's very hard to tell the public, okay, you should expect your refund a certain day. In an ideal world, yes, 10 to 21 business days. But other than that, you know, as long as you file everything and everything is correct. Another thing is that most people that have dependents that are qualifying for the earned income credit will have to wait a little bit longer. Those get pretty much put under a microscope and make sure that these dependents are actually legitimate, you know, so they should be expecting those refunds between the 2nd to 3rd week of February, even if they filed today.
Okay.
Right.
Wow. Well, you know, I really appreciate you coming and breaking this down. I know tax season is like so stressful for so many people.
Right.
And as I mentioned, a lot of people do look forward to that like extra cash that they have. So, you know, we truly appreciate you coming in person again to kind of talk to us about this. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was very fun.
If you wish to speak with Jeff about any tax concerns you may have or set up an appointment, please call him at 212-567-3545 or email him at jeff@commissiontax.com. Stay tuned. We have more open right after this.
I don't know why you're so sad. You've got a roof over your head.
Bro, you gotta stop with that depression stuff. That's a white people thing.
Escúchame, en esta casa, los hombres no lloran.
You all right?
It just feels like it's coming from everywhere.
Do you want to talk about it?
Thanks for hearing me out, bro. Appreciate it.
You can talk to me if you're feeling sad.
Whenever you need to talk, I'm here, okay?
You can now watch MNN, Brick TV, QPTV, and SIC TV on BronxNet. Tune in to BX Omni, Channel 67 Optimum, 2133 Fios during most Sunday evenings. We'll show you some amazing content from our friends at Manhattan Neighborhood Network, Brick TV in Brooklyn, Queens Public Television, and Staten Island Community Television. Every borough represented in the Boogie Down. Epic partnerships for the ages. And catch our new Next channel, produced in partnership with MNN, 24/7 on BronxNet Channel 952 Optimum and 2138 FiOS.
Welcome back. Nonprofit organization Consumer Reports finds that getting a restful night's sleep is essential to your overall well-being. The organization is now showing people how they can achieve better sleep to get healthier and improve their physical and mental health. Joining me to discuss is home writer for Consumer Reports, Tanya Christian. Tanya, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I think this is a really interesting, segment because, we're talking about sleep and analyzing our sleep. Now, can you first just explain why it's so important to analyze your sleep?
Absolutely. I mean, sleep is essential to your overall health. It really does affect how you move through life. And so that's why it's important to know how much sleep you're getting and also the quality of sleep. You want to make sure that you are getting a nice, restful sleep to get you through the day.
Now, I want to talk about this. It actually just came up to me right now because I know for so long we've been hearing that you need to get about 8 hours of sleep a day. And then there are some people who are like, you know what, I'm good on 5. Is that true? Or do you really do need 8 hours of sleep a day?
Well, they do say 7 to 9 hours. That is what doctors recommend. And I think often we feel like, I got 5 hours, I'm great. But honestly, that can contribute to issues with your immune system and overall health issues. So even though you feel great, your body might be reacting to the lack of sleep that you're getting.
Now, I think it's important when we talk about sleep, to look at a sleep environment. I know that's definitely what Consumer Reports, encourages people to look at. So what does a good sleep environment look like?
Yeah, so a good sleep environment, as you said, is important. It's really the number one thing to getting good sleep. First off, you want to make sure that the temperature in the room is right. Now, some people might be surprised to know that the temperature that most sleep experts recommend is 65 degrees. So it might feel a little cool to some people, but you have to remember that the temperature in the room is really what tells your body, signals to your body that it's time to sleep and keeps it rested. Also, you want to think about any distractions, disturbances. So if there's a light on your TV, block that out with maybe black masking tape. Or if you sleep with a pet, maybe have an air purifier in there to make sure that the air is clean and allergens are not disturbing your sleep. Another thing, humidity. You want to keep it between 30 and 50%. So if the air in your room is too dry, make sure you put a humidifier in there to add humidity to the room.
Now, you brought up light, and I thought that was really interesting because I know oftentimes when people talk about light, they're usually talking about your cell phone. But this could also be, which I didn't even notice before, but this could be like if you have Wi-Fi, a Wi-Fi box in your room, those little lights, or, the cable box, those are really small things that we don't really notice. But can you just talk about how they actually do affect your sleep more than you may even realize?
Yes. So, ideally, when you go to sleep, it's completely dark because those small indicator lights can be a disturbance. Just say you wake up in the middle of the night. Your body tells you when it's dark out that it's sleep time. It has something to do with your circadian rhythm. And so you want to make sure that you are not interrupting that by bringing light in. And that could be from outside, which is why a number of people use those darkening blinds. But you can also use a $20 sleep mask. If you don't want to go through the hassle of taping everything up, a sleep mask will also do the trick because, again, it's telling you it's completely dark out. It is time to sleep.
Now, what are some key elements that contribute to bad sleep?
Yeah, so we talked about temperature before. If it is too hot in a room, it's going to keep you up. Also, if it's stuffy in a room, if it's too dry in a room, which is why we say bring in that humidifier, all these things will keep you up at night. Again, I have a puppy. He likes to sleep in our bedroom. Allergens. those are what we consider disturbances that can keep you up, or if you go to sleep, can make it very difficult for you to get back to sleep.
Now, what are some things people can do, or maybe what are some symptoms that people may realize just so that they know that they actually may be suffering from a lack of proper sleep?
If you're feeling drowsy throughout the day or you have that sleepy feeling, there's a good chance you did not get enough sleep. Some people even wake up with that feeling that, they are not feeling like they had a restful sleep. These are things that should signal to you you need more sleep.
Now, I want to talk about age a little bit because I know sometimes people feel as they get older, uh, like people maybe say like, oh, well, I'm not a teenager anymore, so, I have to get this amount of sleep. But is it because they're getting older, or is it because of those, elements that we talked about that they're not really paying attention to?
I think as we get older, we just have more responsibilities. And so a lot of people find it difficult to make time in their schedule to get the full hours. But the truth is, we really do need our sleep. Now, as you get older, seniors, it's just a fact that less sleep comes with that territory. But if you are 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, you should be getting the 8 hours recommended by sleep experts.
Now, can a lack of sleep have a negative effect on you throughout the entire day, or is it just in the morning?
Oh, absolutely. It can have an effect throughout the day. And I think people feel it at different periods. There are some people who wake up groggy and they know they did not get a good night's rest. But some people, it might hit at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm sure you know people who say they have to have a coffee after lunch because their body just naturally gets sleepy at that time. And that's because they're not rested. They're feeling that fatigue that has kicked in from not getting a good night's rest.
And I want to add to that, would you say people who are like, oh, I need a nap when I come home, is that also in response to not getting enough sleep? Or is that just a normal thing that people just need to take a nap?
I am not a sleep expert in the sense that I have not studied this. But what I do know is that nap for a lot of people is because their body is feeling drained. So their body is naturally telling them, listen, you need more sleep. Now, I imagine there are people who use it as a way to unwind, a 20-minute power nap just before they have to get into that next thing, cook dinner, take care of the kids, do the homework. But if every day you're feeling that I must get sleep, I need a nap now, it is more than likely because you are not getting enough sleep at night. Most people who get enough sleep should be able to make it throughout the day without a nap. And that's because you don't want it to affect your sleep at night. Naps can sometimes disturb your sleep when it comes time to get that rest at night.
Now, Consumer Reports has actually done some research in regards to mattresses, and I think this is really interesting. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we have over 200 mattresses in our ratings. And what's nice about having a membership to CR is that you can see exactly what kind of mattress you need for your body type and for your sleep position. So the number one thing with buying a mattress, buying a pillow, is you want to make sure that your body is aligned. And so when you're trying out a mattress, let's say you've had a mattress for 7 to 10 years and you know for sure it's time to get a new one, you want to test it out and make sure that your body is aligned. But with our mattress ratings, it shows you, okay, well, I'm a petite side sleeper. Here are the mattresses for you. And that's important because even a new mattress is not going to be the best mattress for you if your body is not aligned and if it's not conducive to your sleep.
Now, I'm really curious. These are so many great tips that we should look at. How long does it take to change your habits so you can achieve better sleep long term?
A habit as far as sleep wise can be changed overnight, right? So that means if you typically have your thermostat and you turn it down to 65, that's something so easy. Or even I mentioned the sleep mask. If you are used to having light come in and you're now sleeping with a sleep mask, these are very helpful things that can be changed overnight. Not looking at your phone throughout the night, that might take a little practice. But what I found is putting it in a little satchel inside of my nightstand is so helpful because it's that added step of having to get it out.
Right.
If you sleep with your phone by your bedside, change it up. Maybe put it outside the room, maybe put it deep in your drawer. It might take some time, but you will get used to it.
I love that tip also because I'm the type of person that I'll put my phone across the room. So when my alarm goes off, I'm like, okay, I have to get up to turn it off because I don't want to hear anymore. So that's a really good tip. Now, I want to talk about the mattresses. Now, I know a lot of times when people are shopping, they tend to think, the quality is better when something is more expensive. I definitely want you to touch on that. And, is that something that you found to be true? Does it really matter if it's a high end versus a low end mattress?
So I'll say this, our top rated mattress runs about $1,900. Our second top rated mattress, $800. So that's proof that it really doesn't matter the price point. You want something that's durable, stable. And as I mentioned before, it's less about the price and more about how you feel on the mattress. Same thing goes for pillows. There are pillows that cost $100. And then there's pillows that cost $25. Both rate very well in our test, but it's about how you feel at night and how comfortable it is to sleep on a mattress or a pillow. Comfort is key.
And speaking of comfort, there's something called sleep-friendly bedding. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. When it comes to bedding, you want something that's breathable. That is number one. Because as we said, if you're hot in your sleep environment, it is going to cause disturbances. You are going to wake up. So you want breathable bedding. A lot of times that's cotton. Cotton is very good for that. If you're like me and you use a duvet, make sure that down comforter is also a breathable material. We have a number out there to choose from, but make sure that you're looking at ones that are, one, easy to clean. So what we say is they have the pockets that are sewn all the way through. So the fibers within the bedding is sewn all the way through. And again, make sure that it's cotton, it's a breathable fabric so that you are not waking up in the middle of the night with sweats or feeling overly hot.
Right. And I also want to add maybe something that doesn't have too many sequins because it may look cute, but it's not super comfortable. So I definitely wanted to add that. But I just want to say thank you so much for joining us and talking about this. This was a really interesting topic because it's something that honestly everybody can listen to and learn something from it because obviously we all sleep. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
To read the article Tanya wrote on how to get a great night's sleep, please go to Consumer Reports website at www.cr.org. We have to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more Open right after this.
Kids!
I don't want to talk about it.
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 Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk about how to plan for an emergency.
Kids, you all right?
This family's prepared. Get tips and resources to make your family's emergency plan. Go to nyc.gov/readyny or call 311 for more information.
How do you know when you've made the right decision? It's the feeling you get in your gut. The one that tells you what's right or wrong. It's the one that says, sure, I can have a drink. Or the feeling that says, okay, I've been drinking. Now what? it's the voice inside you that says, I'm buzzed. Better leave the car when it's time to go. Plan ahead. Catch a sober ride. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
You're not gonna get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
Welcome back. Organization Partners Health Plan will launch a mobile dental clinic in the Bronx on February 18th. This comes as an effort to solve disparities amongst patients with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Join me to discuss the first mobile dental clinic for PHP members is Chief of Member Relations and Advocacy, Karleen Haines. Karleen, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Kibin. Thanks for having us.
Now, could you first talk about your organization Partners Health Plan?
Sure. So very unique health plan, a managed care plan, but very different from others in that we only serve the DD population, meaning intellectual and developmental disabilities, adults who have Medicaid and Medicare in the downstate areas of New York. So very, very special. And we do some things that other plans don't do in reference to supplying support and coverage for their IDD specific services such as day habilitation, supported employment, but also covering the full range of healthcare. So medical, vision, dental, healthcare, therapies, all of it. And so it's very unique, and members are also offered care management services that include a registered nurse and a social worker on team. So it's very, very specialized plan, non-traditional, if you will. Mm-hmm.
Now, as you mentioned, your organization focuses on, the community of people with IDD. Why are people in this community facing disparities, as we can see probably with health, but specifically with dental care?
Well, it's a great question. In general, folks with IDD are subject to being marginalized, right? And there's disparities in everything from, socioeconomic, education, and including healthcare. And so we look to sort of fill the gap where that is. We also have Partners Health Plan has a lot of diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives, and our hope is to continue to, bring forth some of these issues that are affecting our members and their families. And so specific to healthcare and dental care, we do see that by and large the population doesn't tend to go to their dental visits, and so we can talk a little bit more about what happens when that occurs. But access to care is really the issue, and so children and adults with IDD specifically attend their dental visits on an annual basis, less than the overall general population.
Yeah, I can imagine for a lot of people, sometimes people will go, maybe a year or so without visiting their dentist. So I can imagine for this community, it's maybe a little bit more challenging when you have to rely on a caregiver or someone else to kind of make that. Is that the reason why maybe it's a little bit harder?
It is. I think not a lot of people like to go to the dentist in general, right?
Right.
Right. I don't. So I understand. But I think there's sensitivities around, first go back to access to care. The fact that there aren't many dentists or offices or clinics that specialize in serving this particular population, people with special needs. And so, for example, you have people who may have autism, and they may have sensory issues that, sights, sounds, smells, the environment, familiar faces. And so I'm anxious to begin with, coupled with my disability. And now I'm expected to go to this dental visit, which makes me very anxious and very nervous. And so we have folks who may need just sedation for cleaning. And most dental offices don't provide that, in-office sedation for just a cleaning. And so those wellness annual types of visits people aren't going to as much because of also the doctors that specialize and support this population.
So would you say that's probably the reason why, their dental needs and experiences may differ from someone else?
Definitely, definitely. I think it's a combination of the type of disability, the range of folks with IDD, from autism to Down syndrome to head injury. You have older folks, younger folks, but definitely there's a range. And so what we want to do with Partners Health Plan is ensure that the doctors in our network, particularly the dentists, understand what our folks need so that we can best serve them and make sure that they have less anxiety when they go to the dentist and that they're going.
Right.
So, right. Mhm.
Now, according to your website, studies show that people with IDDs have 30% more untreated cavities, 50% more missing teeth, and 150% more gum disease. You talked about, the lack of specialized oral care. And this is something that a lot of people, fortunately, don't have to necessarily think about. Can you talk a little bit more about that and just how that lack of special care is actually affecting the health of people in this community?
Sure. So oral health is definitely tied to overall wellness and general health. We do have folks, for example, who have seizures, and seizure medications or medications taken to control seizures can often result in, if not treated properly, thrush, infections, tooth decay, things like that. And you mentioned having missing teeth. I mean, how can you eat properly and be safe with your nutrition? So these are very, very crucial areas of health that we want our folks to take part in. Care managers at Partners Health Plans working with families to make sure that people can have access to their dentist and monitoring. Do you need help in finding one? How's it going? Maybe a desensitization visit where I'm anxious for my appointment that's coming up in 2 weeks. And so maybe I can go for some pre-visits, visit the lobby, see some familiar faces, notice the sights and sounds, that kind of thing, and get used to it before I head there. And also, in some cases, have my family or an aide, someone to come with me, which is important.
Now, I think it's amazing that your organization is doing this work because it's one thing to just know about it, but definitely to put that action is amazing. And on February 18th, you guys are going to be having an event coming up. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So during COVID, you can imagine the general, all of us, I assume, had a hard time getting to our doctors and dentists. So, and this is something that we wanted to do. We have offered teledentistry, which can occur, believe it or not, as well for our members. But even with those, we offer free transportation to get to and from. But even with that, we still have people who have not been able to, get to their dentist or doctor. So with this mobile health unit, which is on February 18th, it's at our headquarters in the Bronx, which is on Halsey. And we're excited about it. It's our first try at this. And we've partnered with Solver Health. And what we'll be doing is a very large mobile health van, if you will be on site. And on the unit itself, there's trained staff, trained doctors who are understanding wheelchair accessible, that type of thing. And we'll be able to have appointments made for our members. And the beauty of this is going into the community. Right. So having this mobile dental unit where it's bringing the services to the community and to the neighborhood and to the folks who need it the most.
Now, you mentioned Solver Health. Can you talk a little bit more about how that partnership began and what that organization is all about?
Absolutely. So, yes, this is sort of a great match because Solver has a history of helping out institutions, local governments, states across the country in supporting this sort of let's bring the healthcare to the community. They've also helped out, let's say, bringing mobile dental units or mobile units to rural communities, for example. And so they have the resources, they have the experience. And so being able to partner with them with this large van to be able to get to our site and invite our members to come is it's a great match.
Now, I noticed that because of the pandemic, although it was a very, traumatic experience for so many people, things like mobile pop-ups, especially in regard to health, have been on the rise. And I think it's really cool that they're kind of here to stay. Can you just talk about the benefits of having, a medical mobile pop-up?
Sure. We actually did something similar in 2020 with COVID vaccine pop-up clinics. And we talked a little bit about dental, but imagine having anxiety or an IDD and having, a needle someone that you're not familiar with coming at you with a needle. So same sort of thing applies. In other words, can we provide this sort of service that's specializing in the healthcare needs of the population that we're supporting, and then bringing it to the community? And so it's very interesting because families, particularly in Bronx and the boroughs and in lower New York City, you have people who speak many different languages, who have very different cultures. And so that equity and that inclusiveness of saying, okay, well, you shouldn't be left out. We need to make sure that you can have access to the care that you need. And so let's do that in a sensitive way that's tailored to supporting not only Partners Health Plan members, but others. And so that I think is why, because you can bring the service to the folks, to the people in the community.
Now, I love that you mentioned, here in the Bronx, there are so many different backgrounds. People speak so many languages. And that makes me think that sometimes that can also be another challenge, in healthcare when you speak a different language and then you do have somebody maybe that you're taking care of that may have a disability. Can you just explain, why it's so important to kind of look at the intersectionality really of something like that, especially in healthcare?
Completely agree. So again, those diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives that Partners Health Plan takes part in is really to ensure that all of our members have they have a voice, that someone's listening to them, that their care team is really, being person-centered and saying, okay, what is it that you need? So if mom is the person in their life or an aide, whoever it is, what language do they speak? What types of services can we provide to you? Do your doctors, is someone there to translate what's going on with you? Providing assessments twice a year to make sure that we are keeping up with what's going on. But again, to your point, ensuring that our network of doctors and providers out there is, can serve the folks that we need to, Bronx and beyond, but also ensuring that the healthcare field is listening. So that's our advocacy efforts, and our, us being a champion at large for the population is to saying to the healthcare community, doctors, hospital systems, you need to serve this population of folks and their families properly. And because if not, those wellness and preventative care issues can lead to harmful health events later.
Now, what information should caregivers have available so people with IDDs can receive this service?
Well, so for the 18th, if Partners Health Plan members out there can certainly get in touch with their care managers, and they can register for the event on the 18th. We will have more. This is our first, which is inaugural unit, which is why we're coming out to BronxNet today and Open Show to talk about it. But we will have more in the future in other boroughs, Long Island, also Rockland, Westchester. But the idea here is, and advice for those with IDD in the community, is to lean on their primary care physicians, their care managers, and the others in their life to make sure that they can connect with appropriate healthcare and doctors.
I think this is an amazing effort, and I'm so glad to hear that, things that we don't necessarily think about, people are thinking about them and providing a service. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. We love what we do. Thanks very much.
Remember, this event will take place at PHP Corporate Headquarters located at 2500 Halsey Street in the Bronx on Saturday, February 18th. You can find out more about this event at PHP's website at www.phpcares.org. We've come to the end of our show today. I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us and for you, the viewers, for tuning in. If you missed any part of today's show, you can catch the Recablecast at 5 and 10 p.m. on Optimum Channel 67 and Verizon Fios Channel 33, or watch anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. I'm Kibin Alleyne, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.